This is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 26 of the Dreams in Drive No Parking Podcast. And today our guest is Bridgett Artise, who is a fashion designer and founder of Born Again Vintage, which is a collection of fashion-forward, recycled garments. One of the things that I love about Bridgett's story, and I think that you guys will get out of it too, is how she was able to turn her hobby for vintage into a business. We talk about the steps that she took to take this idea into a viable, revenue generating brand for her. We also talk about just what really goes into hustling for your dreams. What are some of the things that you can do to get the confidence to really believe in yourself and your ideas? We talk about what you can use to inspire you, how to know when to jump, and why doing what you love is important. If anything, I hope that you guys really understand what you can do in your own life to feel that you are born again. A lot of people listening in may have this idea, may have something that you love so much, but you're not really sure about how to take it to the next step. I think listening to Bridgett's story will be inspiration for you. So please listen in. Remember, you can go to dreamsindrive.com and click on episode 26 for our show notes. And if you're listening in on SoundCloud or iTunes, please subscribe, rate, leave a review, or share this episode with someone else. We hope that you enjoy, and we're going to start the interview right now. So one of the first questions that I love to ask our dream drivers is, what inspires you as a child? I think it's always so interesting when we're talking about, being a creative entrepreneur, being a lifestyle entrepreneur. Like, what were those things that little Bridgett was doing growing up?
Well, it's really funny because I think there's a saying in regards to what you were doing at the age of 9 or by 9 is usually what you end up doing as an adult. Mm-hmm. And that's so weird because by 9, I loved to gather people. I was the gatherer. I was the friend that brought all the other friends together from different towns and put on little talent shows in my basement. Or I just like to bring people together. So that was one thing I did a lot as a kid. And I was also addicted to Barbie dolls. So I had 23 Barbie dolls, and that was like my special number. And I love paper dolls. So anything with dolls and changing their clothes. And, I even made clothes for them, which were hideous. But, I was just really into the dolls.
You know what's funny? As a kid, I still have like old sketchbooks. I thought when I was younger that I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I had like all these little outfits that I would sketch and I would give them names. And I even had a phase where my dad, it's funny, he's the sewer in my family. He's Caribbean, he's Jamaican. So he said his mom taught him how to make his own clothes because,
Right.
So he taught us how to sew. So I have this obsession with making stuffed pillows. So I would basically make pillows and put tissue in them. And then I would, I had another phase where I would cut up. It's funny. I would cut up old clothes and try to make new things out of them. So I had this like jean skirt that I would try to make out of old jeans. So it
sounds like you were supposed to be the reconstructor.
Yeah, but you know what? Then I got into girl band management. I had a girl group in 4th grade called KRS. I was the manager. We had little backyard concerts, and then I just kind of evolved from there. But the fashion, I think I still do fashion as in I like style now. So I like to say I'm fairly stylish, but yeah, I don't think the actual design was for me.
And that's weird because I did all of that with dolls and like dressing them, but that was like the furthest thing from my mind once I started to pursue a career once I got out of school. I wasn't thinking about designing. So it's kind of weird saying that now because it was a clear indication that I was very interested at an early age in fashion.
So what did you study in school then?
I studied buying and merchandising at FIT and accounting, oddly enough, at University of Maryland.
So when did that shift happen? Like, did you graduate and realize that you didn't really want to pursue that career and liked design more?
Well, I once I left University of Maryland because I definitely didn't fit into that type of atmosphere or that size university. And so when I went to FIT, I immediately fit in. But once again, my goal was buying, and I really enjoyed it. I thought I would just climb the buying ladder. That was my intention, and I really enjoyed that job. So the design really came from me actually being an at-home mom and having time on my hands and wanting to give back and wanting to do something and creating a talent show, incorporating a fashion show in the talent show, and just chopping up clothes so the kids have something to walk down the runway with no desire or intention to sell the clothes or any interest in the clothes. It was for the kids to just fill up some time in a talent show.
So then that's so interesting. So it kind of started as just a hobby that you were doing because it came about. But when did the whole Born Again vintage brand come alive? Or when was that brand born?
Well, initially it was Artise Originals. That
Mm-hmm.
was the name of the brand, and Born Again Vintage was a tagline.
Mm-hmm.
And I did T-shirts first. I didn't even do women's clothes. I did T-shirts that were sayings cut up from vintage shirts. So I would buy the blanks, cut up the vintage shirts, and create all these crazy sayings. But and I enjoyed doing it. But once you start going into 3, 4 word phrases and you're cutting these up individually and sewing them individually, it was an awesome idea, but it was just a lot of labor and a lot of work, and it just didn't pan out as far as being effective. So that's when I started to branch out into the clothes. And I was selling at the Young Designers Market on Bleecker, and then they opened a collective around the corner on Lafayette. And once I went to the collective, I mean, literally, I was selling, daily. And I just, I was kind of dumbfounded. As much as I loved doing it, it was still very much a hobby to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until Random House stumbled across my booth in this collective and loved the tagline Born Again Vintage, left a card. I wasn't there. We played phone tag forever. And then finally we went to lunch, and, she's like, yeah, I would love for you to write this book. And, and I'm eating my lunch and I'm trying not to, look like what?
Me?
Like, right? What are you talking about? And so, we finished the lunch. I went back home and I was just literally dazed because I didn't understand why me. I really wasn't taking it that serious. So to have that type of proposal, pitched to you, you're like, but this is just a hobby and I do this on the side. So it was probably that moment when I knew that it was more than what I was at. I even knew what it was, and I started to take it a lot more seriously. And that's when it went from BRT's Originals to Born Again Vintage.
And the book came out, was it 2008 that it came out, or 2000,
Okay.
2008? And what was that whole process of, like, putting together, this was your first book, right?
Right.
What was that process like?
Well, it was really interesting because, you look at the book and it just looks like we were all together because, as I tell everybody, if you don't read one word, it is probably the prettiest book you'll ever look at. I mean, the styling is just amazing. So, basically I told them the different projects that I was going to present for each season, and they would nix yay or nay, whatever. And then once we were solid on those 25 projects, they took all the pieces. They took, and I wasn't around. They took the pictures of the befores, gave them back to me. I made all the pieces. I gave it back to them. They took all the afters. I wasn't there for any of it. So literally, I just made the clothes and gave it to them. And so when I got the first copy of the book, I mean, I was blown away. I was literally blown away. And that was probably another pivotal moment for me because looking at my pieces in that book, it was, I was blown away.
So can you kind of describe to our listeners, and I feel like I should have probably asked you this earlier, but what exactly is it that you do with your clothes? So you kind of, you use vintage or thrifted clothes, right? And you deconstruct them and recreate new styles. But can you kind of just walk us through that whole process, that design process?
Sure. I usually go thrifting for my pieces. Some pieces are donated. Some pieces are left over from, swaps or different events that I have. So, I have access to a lot of different pieces, but I usually get inspired from the thrifting part of it, and going to select those prints and those colors and those textures that, I can incorporate with whatever I have already. So after I do that and a piece inspires me so much, I'll immediately start working at it. So I could see something in the store, let's say, and if I love it that much, I could probably tell you what I'm going to do with it, within 10 minutes. And when it inspires me that much, I immediately want to go home and I immediately want to make it. And usually that's what I'll do. So I'll tear it completely apart. So we could have a whole dress, and I'll cut the dress and I'll use the dress just for fabric. So that dress could be a jacket, that dress could be a pair of shorts, that dress could be a vest. I mean, the dress could be anything, whatever it is that I turn it into. And I usually incorporate it with other pieces. Normally, it's rarely I'll use one piece for a whole garment. So usually it's about 2 or 3 different pieces, all chopped up and put back together to make a completely different look and a completely different outfit.
And I know one of the things that I think your tagline now is bringing sustainability to the forefront of fashion. So you really are advocate for sustainable fashion. Why do you think it's so important that, I think I was reading a previous one of your Ebony interviews where you were talking with Melanie Yvette about just the importance of like what this means to you. Can you kind of tell our readers, like, or our listeners, I should say, like, why is sustainability something that is a passion and an interest of yours, and why is it important for us all to consider that as we buy clothes?
Well, initially, I was extremely passionate and I had this affinity towards vintage. That was my whole pull in this. And then once I did this and realized, so that wasn't even my idea going into this, that it was sustainable or eco-friendly or anything like that. It was really the passion about the vintage. But once I realized it was sustainable, and not only that, I would probably say that reconstruction is probably the most sustainable thing you can do with fashion or old clothes or any textiles. So, once you learn that, and then of course I have to do the research because now I'm in this, this market. And once you do the research, it's really, really hard to go back, or it's really hard not to have, change your mindset when you find out how much clothes actually end up in the landfill. And then you find out that clothing is the smallest percentage that gets recycled out of all the waste. And to me, that's the smallest percentage. And I think that's insane. So, once you have all these facts and then and mind you, because I do what I do, I'm around a lot of people's houses with a lot of clothes. And so I get to see the masses of clothes that are just being thrown out. And then people have to figure out what to do with these clothes. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of pounds of clothes that, literally just get tossed out because they've been left behind, or a house is empty, or, for whatever reason. So, I mean, once you get all the facts and you know what's going on, it's really hard to kind of support fast fashion. I mean, because it's just doing so much damage. And I know everybody wants to look cute and trendy, and I get it because I was one of those too, once upon a time. But, I just don't think that we're aware of all the different options we have. I think that, because it's not mainstream and because it's not really out there, people just equate it to a type of texture or cloth, like hemp, or the way the cotton is made. There's so many different aspects of sustainability now in clothing. It's so many different choices you could choose to make a smarter decision and still be high fashion and still be trendy and still look cute. I just don't think people know it. I just think the awareness. So that's why my whole thing is like, making things so funky and out there that it gets that attention and people can realize that, yeah, this was made from a 1940s dress and a 1970s t-shirt and a H&M blouse, because there's a lot of H&M and a lot of Forever 21 in the thrift shop. They're flooded with it. So, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna say something, but then I caught myself because I was gonna say yes. Because like when I go, I love thrifting myself. I love going to the to like Goodwill. And there's like a local thrift store by me. I live in Orange, New Jersey. Um,
Okay.
so there's this place that it's called a second round thrift, and I just like going through there because you realize like people throw out or give away things that are really like, you know how they say one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Of
and I
course.
and I feel like a lot of times with the whole idea of thrifting, it's really a mindset that people think, oh, I don't want to wear someone else's
Oh yeah, definitely.
shirt. I don't want to wear. I'm like, really? You don't know when you buy something at the store if two people bought and returned that same outfit and they didn't even wash it. So it's just it's so interesting how it's all a mindset when we think about fashion and what is in trend and what is
Right.
good. It's
And
all
the thing is, the
cultural.
trends are like, in such a quick cycle or a quick turnaround that, by the time you really get use of a particular shirt or blazer, whatever, it's already out. And then you don't feel like you can wear it because it's dated.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, clothes have such a short life cycle now that it's just things get tossed a lot quicker than they ever did because things are just moving so quickly.
You know what that made me think about is the whole idea that we're allowing these stores to dictate what our style should be. Do you think that it's important? And our dream drivers are all like creatives, they're fellow creatives, fellow lifestyle entrepreneurs. Do you think it's important that, or I should ask, how important do you think is developing your own personal style so that you don't necessarily need to have it dictated by one of those big brands that are telling you what you should be wearing?
Well, I mean, I think my whole brand is about that,
Mm-hmm.
because, they're one of a kind. So, one, no one else is ever going to have that. And I realize that my customer, is confident. She wants to look different from everyone else. She doesn't want to look cookie cutter. She doesn't want to look like the trend that everyone, I've always had a problem with that. Even in high school, I would always go against the grain. I hate conforming, it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I going to look like I mean, I just thought it was bizarre in my head, even as a teenager, like, why would I want to look like somebody else? But even as a buyer, I would always be the one, causing issues because I would always want to be the one that's buying, the different pieces so that was always an issue for me. I just didn't understand why everyone wanted to have the same thing. Like, there's options. Why wouldn't you want to? And there's something that I always say to my students at FIT is that, your eye is your eye. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
has your eye. I mean, literally, there's not one person that has your eye. So you have to be confident in that eye and, what you gravitate to and what you're drawn to is what you wear, and that's your style. And, nobody can, there's no opinion about that because it's your style and your eye.
So how did you develop your own personal confidence when it came to your personal style and just the way who Bridget is? I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with is really developing that confidence so you can get to the point where you really don't care if other people think what you're wearing is cool or good or whatever.
I mean, I definitely think it's a work in progress.
Mhm.
I think that society and just the way we're brought up, I mean, we're going against the grain. So it's not natural for us, to want to be different or think outside the box. It's a rarity. That's where, us creatives come from. It's not a whole bunch of us. I mean, it might seem like that, but we're the minority for sure. It's definitely something that developed in me the more I became confident in my brand, the more I became confident in, what I meant to the brand and what I brought to the brand. So, Born Again Vintage to me is very much, just a branch of who I am, basically, just that person that, wants people to feel special and feel unique and feel original without, having to conform, basically, just really being confident with who you are. I think that's just such a big thing in life because once you accomplish that, to me, a lot of things kind of come to you naturally.
I definitely agree with that. And I took a note. I think I was reading something and doing research for the podcast, and something I read on your site, or it might have been another interview you've done. You talked about how you have this philosophy of second chances when it comes to your clothing. Do you have that same mindset in your own life, or do you think that mindset of believing in the second chances and believing in you can always give life again to something old, it has kind of been demonstrated in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. I think, Born Again Vintage was basically born out of my second chance. And that was in regards to losing, my third child and really having that choice in front of me on whether to go down the path of, getting sad and grieving and depressed about it, or, taking that energy and putting it into something positive. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that was a huge turning point for me because I really had that choice to make. I literally made the choice. So, putting that energy into, buying a sewing machine and getting a mannequin and just trying to stay busy, that's where Born Again Vintage came from. So, absolutely, I believe in that and I encourage it. And I probably promote it, any chance I get, because I just think that, if it's color, if it's gender, if it's age, there's always something that people feel that's holding them back. And I just feel like there's no expiration on, your dream. If it's in you and you have the passion and you have the confidence, you can really do whatever it is that you want to do. And you shouldn't feel, have that fear or doubt, kind of keeping you from doing it.
So, in your early days, when you first had the idea and you were really developing the brand into like a business, what were some of your biggest challenges in those early days? Or maybe what are some of the challenges you even face now?
Well, I mean, I would think probably I have this not, yeah, I would have the same challenge, or one challenge that's remained consistent for me is because I have such a niche market,
Mm-hmm.
is really narrowing it down and finding that market, and I know who she is. And, the longer I'm in this, I'm able to narrow it down more and more. So I'm getting an idea of the age range and the demographics. But that's probably been one of the hardest things for me is finding that customer. That is, open because it's a sustainable aspect and there's the vintage aspect. I assumed my customer would be vintage enthusiasts of vintage, and that's not necessarily the case. So I was kind of baffled when I found that out because that's who I thought my customer would be, and that's not so much the case. So one of my challenges, and like I said, consistent, is really narrowing it down on who she is, and where she is. That was one, and probably early on, I would say the confidence,
Mm-hmm.
because I started it out as a hobby. I didn't really have the confidence that this was a quote unquote business. I just had fun doing it. So when people bought it, I would always be like nervous, like, oh my God, will they fit it? Uh, but so that I had to really work on. And the more achievements you get, and the more acknowledgments you get, the more your confidence, goes up and you start to believe in it. So that was definitely a struggle early on for me.
I want to go back to the whole idea of you saying that, because you had a niche market, you really had to figure out who is your woman. What were some of the things that you did, or not even woman, who's your customer, but what were some of the things that you did to really narrow down, or did you know starting out, like was there some kind of step that you had to follow, or some kind of system you followed to really help you figure out who your target demographic was?
Well, I mean, I think the challenge for me was that I was reconstructing. So in all the markets that I went to, and we're talking, from state to state throughout the US, I was always the only
Mm.
reconstruction person there. So, I didn't have any go to. So, literally, I had to really figure it out state by state, market by market, event by event, just based on who bought stuff, because it was such a new category. And, wasn't really anything out there for me to draw any type of information from.
Mm. And was there anything that you learned that you think an aspiring, designer or aspiring, maybe there's a inspiring reconstructionist. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
the right term. An inspiring person out there who, is there any tip that you would definitely give someone, like if you wish you known this when you started, what would that be?
ooh, that's a good one. Um, I would say to have the business plan first.
Mm-hmm.
I did the business plan midway, and some people don't need it. So I don't want to say that that's a straight across the board type of thing, but to have everything mapped out, because it wasn't until I actually wrote my business plan, which is 49 pages, that I actually saw like this is a viable business.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do the competition and you do the statistics and you do the financials, I mean, it really maps everything out for you to see on paper that this is a viable business. And I think that until I got that, I was maybe unsure or questioning that the entire time. So I think if you do that and you put the work and the research into doing that, I mean, probably even by the end of it, you might not even want to do it, but it'll definitely, no, seriously, so you'll have that option at the end. Like it could be a crossroads moment. But yeah, I think it's definitely a good plus to start that way.
And how long did it take you to complete it? Like, did you, like, was it over a course of a few weeks, a few
Well, I
months?
had I had help, and with that help, it was me and that person probably for a week straight, and to like the wee hours of the morning. So like,
Okay.
working hard and just nonstop for 7 days.
So when you think about the Born Again Vintage brand as it is right now, would you say you're completely happy with where you are, or like where would you love to see the brand grow to?
Well, I mean, I'm so proud of Pony Vintage,
Mhm.
because literally, like I said, it was just a little table, a card table set up at a market, 8 years ago. So, where it is now, absolutely, I love where it's at. I
Mhm.
would love for, once again, for it to be that brand responsible for bringing, sustainability to the forefront of fashion. I really want her to be that. I do.
And one of the things that I thought, I was reading up, and I know that you said this niche is very, very small. So I'm guessing, even as a woman of color, being a black woman, it's probably even smaller, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. But I found like during the first 4 or 5 years, that well, we didn't even vintage wasn't something on our radar, nor was sustainability.
Mhm.
So, that was, we are, black women weren't my market at all for, I would say, the first half of my business. And then, it started to get trendy. People started to catch onto it. And then now I would say it's probably about half of my business now.
Yeah.
So definitely I love to see that one, the sustainability is definitely spreading and it's becoming more diverse and not just in one particular area. So that's awesome.
And I also think something that's interesting, I think just within like culture too, I think people are now becoming more aware of, or some people I should say, are becoming more aware of what we're doing to the environment. Or I should say, in this subset, in this area. I don't know how it is out there in Texas and other parts of the country, but I definitely think in this like New York City metro area, we're definitely realizing that, well, there's a lot of, we're trying to save resources, especially because it's so expensive. The cost of living here is so
Yeah.
high too. So I think that's something that's on people's mind. And I also think, every nowadays, if you're not thrifting, you can't even get into Brooklyn.
That's a good one.
Right? Like, I feel like it's just so funny how culture can shift
Exactly.
buying and shift our how we spend our dollars.
Well, I'm excited.
Mhm.
That makes me very excited that a lot of people are on the thrifting bandwagon now. I'm hoping it's not a fad that'll die out, but vintage is definitely, well, vintage has always been in and it will always be in.
Mhm.
Thrifting is definitely getting a resurgence now, and I'm hoping it stays just as relevant as vintage.
One of the things I love and I respect about your brand is, I like that, if you go to your site, you have different different things that you are associated with. You're a designer, a stylist, an author, an event organizer, a teacher, a vintage expert, and mom. Like, you're a true hustler. You're not just putting your eggs all in one basket. How important has that been to your brand, and also just to the practical side of, staying afloat, being able to be making this something that you can make a living from, pursuing your passions, I should say.
Well, I can tell you that I don't do one thing that I don't love.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you named, I love every one of those. And so I think that I've been lucky enough to have Born Again Vintage open doors that, allow me to lead to organizing events and having the book and teaching a class. So Born Again Vintage is the center of all of it, so I would always say that is, designing would be my first and foremost, out of all of those. But I love all of them equally. They all inspire me. And like I said, I just like really bringing people together. And my workshops probably have the most diverse group of women you'll ever meet in life. My class on Tuesday, probably the oldest woman in there, I would say she was maybe in her 70s, and then I have, a 19-year-old, I have someone from Brazil. It's just the most diverse group, all together to sit. I mean, it's just a fun class. I mean, I've never had such a experience where, I actually feel like a student with them. I never feel like I'm the teacher. It's just like we're all together, like the old school sewing club almost that like have look for the side of Hoarders Anonymous,
What's the name of the class that you teach at FIT?
It's clothing reconstruction. I do a clothing reconstruction class there, and I do how to build a vintage business there.
Is that something that is it like, do you have to be a member or not a member? Do you have to be a student, or is it like a continuing education class that anyone?
Class, yeah.
Okay. So if anyone listening in can sign up for that if they want to?
The next ones will be September. Yeah.
Bridgett, one of the things that I think is really important, like one of the things that a lot of our dream drivers often struggle with is knowing when to jump, right? Knowing when to pursue this passion of theirs. Do you have any advice for someone, on the cuffs and not really knowing, like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Like, is it for me? What would you say to that person on the edge?
Wow. Oh God, that's a tough one because, to me, if there's any doubt, I don't know. I've never had a moment, things might get really tough, and I'm not going to say they never did and they weren't hard, but, it was just always figuring out another way. It was never about giving up.
Okay.
So, so I always feel like if it's something that's in you and it's your dream, you just figure out another way to get there. I mean, there's several routes. There's not one route to, a destination. There's plenty. So, I think that if you have the perseverance and you have the resilience, I just think it's something that you stick out. Now, to me, things are obvious. If, back to back and there's no type of success and there's no type of uplifting, inspiring, because I'm inspired, by selling a piece or doing a class or doing an event. Everything that I do that's a part of Born Again Vintage inspires me. So if it was just like draining and I wasn't getting anything from it, and to me that just, I think I mean, I don't even think there's any room for a question. I think when it's just not giving back to you the way you want, or need to feel or get from it.
Mm-hmm. I think that can even be in all areas of our life too.
Absolutely.
When we're pursuing our passions and our dreams, we have to then take a audit of our whole entire lives and realize what habits are those that are draining. Who are the people, the relationships that are toxic that won't be conducive to this growth that you desire. So,
and absolutely, and you have to grow with your business. As a person, not necessarily the business, but you have to grow with the business. You notice all types or you learn all types of flaws and your strengths and your traits and your weaknesses as you're building this business, and it's your responsibility to work on them, and nip them. I mean, so that's a part of it too, is working on yourself, because you can't be the same person going in the business and the same person that, takes it to, where it's supposed to be.
I like that you said that because I think it's something that a lot of us can sometimes fear is we don't want to be critical with, feedback, or we don't even want to ask for feedback sometimes. Like, what can I be doing so that 12 months from now when I'm doing my annual review, I'm not looking at the same data every year,
Right, right, right.
If there's no
And
growth, there's no point in some in some
right.
aspects.
And that's why, sometimes you have to be honest with yourself. And that's when the point where you decide to go a different route or like you said, jump ship.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so interesting and so true, because even when I think about this whole Dreams and Drive podcast, so I started it in January, and I had this whole idea that all the podcasts were going to be in cars, and I was trying to do, like, logistically it just didn't make any sense, right? And
Right,
I realized, all right, maybe you need to start with no, at first I thought it was going to be all in-person interviews. Then I'm like, wait, that means you have to have a studio. You have to, like, do all these things. I didn't have the resources. So I went to the next step, which is like, you know what? Skype. Most people have it. Just get the call recorder, do it
right.
that way. And maybe one day you can then work up to that goal. But sometimes even if you have a goal, you have to kind of step back from it and figure out, all right, what are the steps that I have to take in order to get there?
See, and
Mm-hmm.
right there, just making that decision, some people that would have stopped them in their tracks, and it would have
Mm-hmm.
never got done.
Yeah.
So, to me, those are the qualities that show somebody that's very passionate about what they're doing, because they just find out another way. Most people would have
Mm-hmm.
been like, "Oh well, okay, I guess
Next.
I'll drive Uber."
Yeah, that was honestly, I was like, wait, all these people I want to interview, there's no way I'm going to get them to come to my friend's house in his, like, in his recording studio in his basement to record a podcast. So,
Right, right,
I had to think about the long-term goal and realize that, all right, once this grows and maybe I can rent a studio space and have all that stuff. But for now, Skype is good, and people still get the message.
Well,
And
this has definitely been a slow and steady process for me.
mm-hmm,
Slow and steady wins the race. It's, definitely been slow, but it's definitely been steady,
mm-hmm,
always having some type of achievement or acknowledgement, at some 6 month point or 3 month point or whatever, something showing me that I'm on the right track and people are listening or people are seeing. So, I've always had that reward that shows me, okay, keep going, and having people around you that believe in you. I
mm-hmm.
mean, that's priceless. It's priceless.
And it's
Those cheerleaders.
necessary.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, yes.
So what's next for the brand? Like, what's next for Bridgett? What's next for the Born Again Vintage brand? What can we expect in the next coming months?
Well, I am doing a collaboration with Housing Works, and I'm extremely excited about that. So we will be hosting a reconstruction workshop in their Chelsea location on July 21st, and it will be 5 to 8. They're going to shut the store down, so it's going to be extremely exciting. I'm really excited about the collaboration, and that's happening in July. I have some fashion shows coming up in Miami and in Toronto. So still doing what I normally do is teaching my
Mm-hmm.
class. Putting on fashion shows and doing workshops. All around the place. I would love ideally to go international with my workshops. That would be definitely a goal for me, is to get Born Again Vintage, cross seas and, start cutting up clothes over there. I would love to be able to do that. And of course, continue to build the website, and, get those clothes out there so people know that, they do have that choice.
All right, so let's go to our lightning round. So this is the part of our interview where it's kind of like a call and response. So I will give you a prompt, a word, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind when you hear it. And remember, this goes along with our dreams and drive metaphor. So I'll be giving you the prompts to a gear shift in the car. Okay?
Okay.
Park,
Backwards.
reverse,
Moving.
Neutral.
Stay put.
And last but not least, drive.
Every day.
All right. And if you're going to put your dreams in drive, you have to have the keys to success. I know that sounds so corny when I say that.
I
so,
like it.
so tell me, Bridgett, like, what are 3 essential things that you think all dream drivers need to have before they hit the road?
Ooh. Determination for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Belief in their whatever it is they're doing, their brand themselves, but they have to believe in it. They are their, own poster board.
Mm-hmm.
So determination, belief in themselves, and maybe consistency. That was a challenge for me too. So I would definitely say consistency is very important.
Right. Thank you so much, Bridgett, for sharing your personal dream driving story and telling us all about the Born Again Vintage brand. I think our dream drivers definitely have learned a lot from you today, and I hope that you were able to get something out of sharing your story and tips to success.
I thank you for the interview. I had a ball, and I can't wait to hear it.
So that's a wrap for episode 26. I hope you enjoyed listening to Bridgett's story. There's so much that we can learn from her. And if anything, I hope that you are inspired to keep your passions alive. Know that there is a way that you can make a life out of doing what you love. And Bridgett's story is a testament to that. If you want to learn more about Bridgett or get more links to her site and other things, go to our show notes at dreamsindrive.com and click on episode 26. If you're listening on SoundCloud or iTunes, please, please, please rate, subscribe, make sure you don't miss an episode. I love hearing from you guys, so if you want to share things, make sure on social you're using the hashtag DreamsInDrive. I love to get in and see what people are, posting and saying about the show, and you can always tag us on social at DreamsInDrive. I won't do any more talking because we just had lots of it just now, but thank you so much for listening in. I appreciate you. As I tell you every week, every episode, we could not do this without you. Thank you so much, and talk to you guys soon.